Yeah, this is really fun. This technology, if anybody's watching, you can see it's called Blue Jeans. It's fantastic. It's quite fun. It's quite a fun little magic software that I've been playing with. So this is the first time I've ever done this with this software. So this is kind of fun and exciting. So
Yay. New,
yeah,
first, trailblazing. I love that.
yeah,
Uh, Awesome. Okay,
awesome.
well, I just shared, so I am focused on you. I'm here, and you know what? I'm gonna close out my Facebook behind our little screen, so I can just be like here with you as we're talking to hopefully many, multiple many's.
I know that's
I've
the
no
other
idea.
thing. It's like we have no idea, and I will go at some point and grab my other device, my cell phone, and
Great,
answer questions if people have
great.
questions at a certain
That's
point. So we'll just kind of at our commercial break, so to speak, I will go grab my cellular device so that I can actually answer questions. But thank you for everyone who is here. It is such a pleasure. Today I have Ellen Ercolini with me. Ellen is a business coach and she has created this really cool system called the frequency analysis.
Mhm.
That's what you call it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not crazy. I was like, that's what I think you're calling it.
yeah.
And she's going to do a live frequency reading about me. So here I am on my Facebook page and she's about to tell me all sorts of things about myself and tell you all sorts of things about myself. And I'll say I'm a little nervous. I'm excited, but also a little nervous, especially since I can't see the comments that everyone may or may not be posting. So this is a
I'm.
interesting experience in trust.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
um,
invulnerability.
totally. Also, who knows? The broadcast might cut out, and that would who knows? So we will just dive right in and get to the frequency reading
To the
about
reading.
me.
Oh, yes, this is so this is fun for me because I often get called like a mind reader, like often people definitely have a like, whoa, kind of reaction to these. So this will be fun to broadcast live so other people can see what that's like. And I'm particularly fascinated because yesterday you posted something on your page that basically was talking about receiving positive feedback and just and receiving um, how you impact people's lives and how people appreciate you and how receiving that feedback for you is sort of this vulnerable edge. And I saw that and I have done my research on yours. So I was like, oh, I'm going to bring this into the work. So I'll wind that in. And then, for a lot of us, I have known you in real life for 2 years now. We met last year up in Canada and we've connected online many times before then. And what I know a lot of people are thinking watching this is like, how does she do it? Like how does she do it? How does she have the bravery to keep moving forward? How does she create this really incredible event that's happening next March? How do you write a book and have your group program and all of these pieces? So what my hope is today is that the frequency analysis not only helps you understand yourself better, but that everybody watching starts to get a sense of how these moving pieces work for somebody else, because when you can see them for someone else, you can start to see them for yourself, which is the whole point of this. So everyone watching along, it's not the like, oh, McKenna's an amazing sparkly flower. You are, but it's like, how can we start to see these things within ourselves? And how can we shift how we relate to them, which is something I'll talk about in a minute, because often it is our greatest strengths that we struggle with the most. And we struggle with them because they're these like big sensitive soft spots that we've had for our whole lives. And often we're sort of bigger and brighter than maybe our peers when we were younger because they were our superpower. And then we got some sort of negative feedback around that at a younger formative age. And it's become this like push pull kind of relationship. So we'll go into all of that with you. So that's my prologue. So the way frequency works, and the reason why I use this professionally with myself and with my clients, is it's got three components that are really user friendly. One is there are three different sections of frequency. So there's a frequency for your outer layer, how you are perceived in the world, your general you-ness, how you show up, right? So, and then there's one that's for your inner world. How are you with your nearest and dearest? Because we know we're different with our people we're in relationships with and our partners and our siblings than sort of the world at large. And there's a space for how we are at work. So our professional skill set, like what are we really good at professionally, but that we might struggle with in other areas of our lives. So, and I came up as a life coach, so I saw this play out time and time again, especially in like the healing and helping communities of like, I'm so good at doing these things for other people, and I struggle in my own life. And so that to me became this really interesting push pull that was fascinating to me, that I wanted to untangle, and frequency has become the tool that I use to untangle that. So that's one piece that is really amazing about it, is there's three different parts of you which have three different vocabularies to understand. Then the other piece of it is frequency is a cycle. It's a 9 year or 9 month cycle. So depending on when you were born, I imagine like you're born into a Ferris wheel gondola and it just moves through the cycle like an old timey clock. Like there are cycles within the cycles. Yeah, exactly. And depending on what gondola you're in, that's your overall frequency. That's your outer frequency. That's how people see you, perceive you. And then you're born into this pattern that is already happening. So your year has a frequency to it and your month has a frequency to it. And so what I'm finding with my clients is understanding where they are in their cycle, and the energy that's supporting their year and their month is super, super, super powerful. So we're going to go into all of that with you. And the third thing that I just adore about frequency is it's very metaphor based. So very quickly here, I'm going to dive into the 5 types of frequencies. And if you're curious what yours are, I have a quiz on my site that you can take that helps you figure out what one's the strongest for you right now. And like I just explained, there's 3 variables that you have, plus your month, plus your year. So it might not always be your overall frequency is the strongest right now. Your year or month might be the strongest. So just know that if you take the quiz. But it's very metaphor based. So if you're a water frequency, still waters run deep, like you keep going, you find the path of least resistance, you can create great change, but you need a lot of time to do it. Water frequencies in general are sort of the least understood in Western culture because they need a lot of time and space, and there's a great depth to them. And we often do not allow that in Western culture, and in Western commerce, I would say. And then you go and there's the wood frequency, which is like go, go, go. It's very driven, it's very growth oriented. And that is where you're going to see Western culture be like really rewarding of those types of people. Yeah. They're like, make it happen, the carpe diems, like all this stuff. And it's, so anyone who has wood anywhere in their frequency tends to be that part really developed because it's so culturally rewarded. And then we have the fire frequency, which is the visionaries, the creatives, they're passionate, they're charismatic, and they might have a hard time grounding, and really they're very like, they're so fun. They're so easy to say yes to things. They want to do all the things. They have this total zest for life. And it can make it hard for them to focus and contain that and put that in one direction towards one or two specific goals. Because for them, they like to feel free and they like to feel unchained from everything. And so that's kind of this double-edged sword because the world looks at them and is like, we love your energy. You're so passionate. Do one thing, like focus, like, and that's this hard push pull that they can find themselves in. Earth frequency is every earth metaphor you've ever heard. Earth mama, nurturer, hugger, like love, like feeding people, earth frequency. And that's me, that's my primary. So I can make a little bit of fun of us for just wanting to take care of everyone because that's how I see the world. And it's this very nurturing energy, but then there's this confidence piece that goes with it as well. So our sort of greatest strengths is that we're very, very strong, and we've got these voices in our head that just are like, who, me? Like, what? Like, really? And working through that is how we own our power and move forward into the world. And then you have metal frequencies, and metals are visionaries. They're the big pictures. They're the ones, they're very regal. They're the totems that they use are the emperor and the princess. So literally like royalty. And they're the really big picture thinkers that see not only the big picture vision, but the small details needed to make that happen, to make the plan go. So they tend to be really great hostesses because they're really good at, they're really sensitive. So they're really good at perceiving what other people want and need and would like need to feel supported and contained. And then they create an environment exactly around that. So anytime, and actually I'm pretty sure, shit, I should have confirmed this before I looked it up. I'm pretty sure Julia Child is a metal. Because I know you have a very close connection with her. I'm pretty sure she's metal because she's very like hostess with the mostest, right? Like she's got a lot of earth in her as well, which is like feed the people and like love through food. But metal is very like let me host you, let me create the experience that I know is going to be what you need. So those are the overall ones. So now that we've got all that overallness, the architecture has been laid.
Just just to pause, I can actually see everybody. It's very cool.
Oh,
So we can
cool.
actually look. So hi everyone. I see right now I can see Tanya and Isabel and Carrie Ann. Thanks for sharing, Carrie Ann. So
Yay.
if you
Hi,
comment, I'll
Tanya.
actually be able to respond to your comments. So it's fun. Anyways,
Oh
it's
my God, I
it's
love
very weird.
this.
Two video streams going, but it's
Okay, I
there.
can't see anyone. I'm just like totally focused on you. So I'm not reacting. It's good. I know. This is so fun to do this live. I have this conversation one on one so often. This is so great to have this like live and then recording somewhere.
Oh, and Lisa and Ruby and Serena. Hi. So
Hi,
many
everyone.
people.
This
There you
is
go.
awesome. So
So much fun.
you, my lady, now that we're done talking about other people, you are an emperor, which is metal for your outside you-ness. And metal, so metals in general are like, people are like, done is better than perfect. And metals are like, that's garbage. Like perfect is perfect. Like it's not done. It's not done until it's perfect. Like your standards for shit are super high. And the with the emperor, the joke is that you're rarely wrong, but if you are, like you won't really admit it. It's like you'll just be like, "Oh, well, and then just kind of like keep moving." Yeah. And the challenge there is because you're so good at seeing the big picture and thinking through all the options and then coming up with like this is the best. And so this can make you wildly fun to hang out with, right? Because when you have an idea or when you do something, you're like, look, don't worry about it, guys. I've already thought through the options. Here's the best one. You're going to like it. And remember that metal thing I said earlier, the hostess with the mostest. Metals are very sensitive to how other people perceive them. So whatever it is you're bringing to the table or you're suggesting, it's with this lens of what's going to be good for everybody. So it's fun and it's cool, but when you're wrong, it can be really brittle. um, One of the big challenges that metals have in general is when you make up your mind about something and then it doesn't go the way you think it's going to go, and it might still go, like you might get to the destination but the journey is different. It's like so hard for you to re to like recalibrate because you're like, but I already thought it. I already decided in my mind that this was how it was going to look and feel, and it's different. And even if it's better, it's like that difference is the hard piece there. Um, and I think it's so interesting to see this in your business because you're branding, you're wearing these like robes. Like there's like the new like imagery that you have for your business is very like royal. I'm just lounging in my, kimono. Like we're just doing these things. Like I'm in these like, castle like environments. Like, don't you want to be here too? It's so regal. And it makes, I mean, having met you in person, this makes a ton of sense for me because I'm like, oh yeah, like you have that energy. But it's fun to see it like totally backed up by frequency as well. Um, yeah, yeah. And what's interesting too
That's
is,
cool.
yeah, yeah, the emperor, the metal energy is a really interesting one. So the thing to watch out for here, which is like I talked about a little bit, metals, if things don't go your way, you can get really brittle and really like stuck or really stressed. And so I'm sure that like negative emotions that you might feel more are like stress or tension or anxiety. And all of those are very, very metal, like negative ways to react to things. And fire is going to be the thing that helps warm you up and helps move you through. So metal, when it's liquid, can do anything. It can create anything. It's super powerful. Metal, when it's solid, is what it is. Like there's no changing it. So fire is the thing that heats metal down so it can rebuild into something else. So when you're feeling tense or stressed or anxious, besides grounding, and doing your sort of body work practice to like reconnect to earth and yourself, um, fire. So fire energy, and that's flirtation, that's laughter, that's that passionate, like fun, vibrant, like silly energy, which when you're in this space, you're gonna be like, this is drivel. Like, why would I waste my time with whatever? Like, I'm so stressed. I'm so in it. There's all this like stuff. But that fire energy is what's going to help move you through that feeling of stress and anxiety. And I'm sure if your partner's watching this, she's like, yep.
She's actually in her final exam today, so she's
Oh,
not
okay.
watching it, but
Wow.
she
Okay.
would agree
Well,
with you.
yeah, if you send her the cliff notes, yeah, that fire energy is really going to be helpful for moving through those times of stress. And what's interesting about this, well, no, I'm going to go to the rest and then I'm going to talk about your month and your year. So your internal, I'm not going to talk about your internal self too much because I feel like that would be revealing too many secrets. Oh, pause on that. The secret, not the secret thing, but the receiving positive feedback. Emperors, you're like have a kingdom, right? But it's like you have to earn it. You have to, there's a sense of prove it, earn it, loyalty. You're not someone who just gives it away for free. You're someone who I'm sure is very loyal when you've an established relationship and people sort of prove that they're of your caliber and worth, but you're not just going to be, everyone's my new best friend and this is amazing. And metals, because of that whole big picture thing, right, tend to think that they're right and tend to think that they know best. And so receiving compliments from other people can be very challenging because there's this voice in your head that's like, but do you really know me? But do you really know enough to like see that or hear that or like say that? And it kind of bounces things out. And so I love that the work you're doing is just receiving, and not letting your mental voices get in the way, because especially for metal energy, it can be this huge barrier to entry because there's this like it comes from a place of regalness and it can show up as ego, right? Because you're mostly right, even though sometimes you're not, because we're all human. But with metal, especially emperor energy, you're right a lot of the time. And g- extending that graciousness to other people that they would know what they're talking about enough to give you compliments is like totally a growing edge for you. And that's every client I've ever had who's got metal either in their work or overall position, like letting people compliment you and know and not doing the thing where you're like, you don't really know, is critical to not feeling like a crazy person.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, so they can be a little bit more private. I mean, and that's where some of the privacy pieces come up too, right? Because you're like, I have a kingdom. There's some boundary stuff there. So I'm not going to talk a super ton about your personal life because of what we just learned about your overall life. But you have mountain earth in your inner life frequency, and that's interesting because it's the strongest of all of the frequencies. This means it gets a lot of hard because it can handle it, which I have that in my outer frequency. So once I realized part of why I have so much hard in my life is because I can handle it, it helped me not look around and be like, why me? Like, why is all this shit happening to me? And not like throwing a fit about it anymore. Um, it's also one it's strong, earthy, nurturing, supportive, grounded. When you're in, but also can use a lot of time to yourself because it's cave energy, like mountain cave. Time is not as relative to that frequency as to others, I would say. So work. This is interesting because we're going to talk about this, and you're going to see that this shows up more for you professionally than in the rest of your life. And in work, you have wood energy, and yours in particular is the beanstalk, which is the most growth oriented of all the frequencies, and it's very much go go go, grow, grow, grow. Like it's the energy of bursting through. It's those first plants that shoot up in spring where you're like, there was nothing. And now there's a 2 foot tall little sapling, or plant, like, and it happens overnight, so it can be bumpy, that growth, but it's very much like forward motion, like making shit happen. And so when I look at all of the things you make happen, I'm like, oh, of course that would professionally, you're like pushing things through and making them happen, and you have a lot of energy for executing things and creating things in ways that other people, when they have so I'll use myself as an example. Like I have metal in my work position, and so that means in general I'm a slower mover, but when stuff gets to the surface, it's really good. And that's how your whole life is, right? Because you've got metal overall. But in work, you're more like, just make it happen and then we'll go from here. Just get it done, just get it out. We'll fine tune it as we go. And you've got enough metal in your personality where you're not going to let things fall through the cracks. You're not going to not follow through on those promises. But for me, I'm like, every I has to be dotted, every T has to be crossed, everything has to be perfect before I even consider like beta testing anything. So it can be a little slower. And you have the opposite energy. You're just like, go, go, we're making things happen, we're executing. So when somebody who's watching you is like, wow, how has she done all of this? Having wood in your work frequency is one of the big reasons why that making things happen energy shows up for you particularly strongly professionally.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. And so what's super fascinating too, remember I talked about how fire is the thing that helps keep you loose and moving. You are in a fire year and you're actually in a fire month right now. And so, like I said, frequency goes through 9-year cycles. Fire is the last moment on that cycle. So fire is the 9th year of a 9-year growth cycle, and it's the 9th month of a 9-month growth cycle. So you are so fire years and months are about visibility. They're like high energy, like high, lots and lots of things happening, but they're also about endings and about burning things off and letting things go that no longer serve you as you go into your next. So you're going into literally a 9-month growth cycle starting like tomorrow. The energy shifts on the 8th. And then in February, yeah, it's an interesting timing for this workshop. Yeah. And and water is going to feel a lot calmer to you. So, and water is designed, it's the first of the 9 years and the 9 months. And water is designed to be like, restore yourself, recharge, dream, like visualize, like spend some time just being with the flow of things, because fire can feel like you're plugged into a fucking electrical socket. And you've been in a whole fire year and you've got 2 more months of the fire year because the energy shifts in early February. But the fire month on top of that is like huge, huge, huge. So in terms of all this growth and all the things you're making happen and creating, there's so much fire behind you right now that it makes sense that you're flexible and malleable and growing and evolving in those ways. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. I'll take it. I'll take the chilled out year. It's funny because my word for next year is savor, and here I am like,
perfect.
slow down and like enjoy. Perfect. I'll take it.
That goes so in alignment with where your frequency cycles are pushing you. It makes tons of sense that would be the thing. And after a year like this, where you might not have had as much time as you wanted to savor all the big and all of the change and all of the everything, and that's, I mean, to me, why frequency is so cool is the system is designed for your growth in mind. So it says like, hey, we know fire's fucking intense. Let's start over with water, where you get more time and you get more space and you're asked to really reconsider what it is you want and your dreams and your visioning. And that's an energy that people sometimes struggle with because we're not used to taking the time in Western society as much, but by being forced to, and so for me, what's really genius about this is when you understand what the wins are in your sales, either monthly or yearly, you can lean into it more. Instead of being like, why does this year feel slow? You're like, oh, okay, this year feels slow because it's designed to let me think big and recover because last year was insane. And you can't have 3 years like that's too much, So yeah, you're going into it. We're going into it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to tease out the parts of you that have felt. So I have parts of you that I feel like I see as sort of your superpower pieces. And I want to guide the conversation in that way a little bit, because what I find with most of my clients that I get into this is these are all pieces we've known about ourselves for a really long time, but have had this like relationship with it because of the bigness of it and because of our own stuff that gets in the way, because this was probably a thing that was bigger than a lot of our peers, at some point in our lives, and we got some negative feedback around it, and then because it was so important to us, it was so sensitive, and it becomes this thing that you're like, no, this is it. Oh, it's so tender. No, this is it. Oh, I don't, and especially with so much metal in you, that's a interesting one. So where my brain was dancing with this, having spent some time, in all of your different orbits, is it really seems like one of your superpowers is the seeing the bigger picture, and then the details needed to make it happen. And the examples, I mean, I feel like there's a ton of examples, but just for people watching along who might not have had as much Makenna in their lives as I do, I feel like buying La Puccine was a big one, right? Like big picture vision, and then a lot of details needed to happen in a fairly quick way to make that happen. All of your business stuff, making this conference happen, the book that you crowdsourced and made that happen, I feel like is a really interesting, like really big picture, lots of small details to make it happen. I'm sure you could provide me with more examples, but those are just the ones that I feel like are very public. And I'm curious how and you're not that old, right? Like you're 30, 20 something?
30, 31.
31. Yeah.
31.
Yeah. But I mean, it's one of those things that I feel like I notice when I talk to people who are in their, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and even 70s. I talked to a woman the other day that she was just like, that sense of anxiety or fear or can I really do this, or could it be this easy, sort of ebbs as we get more years under our belts because we let some of the shit go. And I find that for people that are in their sort of 20s to 30s and even sometimes 40s, it's this like thing, and so I'm wondering for you, how has your relationship been as someone who makes big things happen, big picture shit with the details to follow it up in your 20s and 30s, and I'm sure younger than that? Like, how has that relationship been for you? Like, how do you relate to that part of yourself and when you get that feedback from other people?
It's really interesting because just this weekend, I was at dinner and one of my family members was like, "Can you just focus on La Pichoon? Can you just focus right now? Like, there's a lot on the line with that project. Can you just focus?" And I was like, "No, don't clip my wings.
Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking bigger than that already."
Yeah.
Like, so it was really interesting. It's interesting because I think I've always been told to think like to stay where I am and focus.
Mm-hmm.
My parents' favorite thing to always talk about is one of my birthdays. We were at Knott's Berry's farm, and like 5 minutes into the birthday, I said, "Oh my God, next year let's go to Disneyland." And they thought I was being ungrateful, and I wasn't being ungrateful. It was that I was thinking, like, I could
Big,
have told them
big.
what I wanted, like what I wanted everything to look like over the next few years.
Yeah.
And I figured that was a detail they needed to know, is that like next year let's do it elsewhere. It didn't mean like don't enjoy where you are, because I was enjoying
Yeah.
where I was. I was having a very good time. I hadn't even started it, but it was
Yeah.
really like the moving forward. So
Mm.
yeah, I'm always kind of looking at bigger picture
Yeah.
constantly.
Yeah. And pushing that boundary for yourself and for other people around you too. Like, and I'm sure that your big picture really blows other people's definitions of big picture out of the water and stirs up some uncomfortable stuff there in some of those relationships, I would imagine. So, I mean, how do you relate to your big picture thinking now? Like, I mean, even in that in that conversation, it sounds like you set a clear boundary and was like, no, like I'm thinking bigger, like it's fine. Like you're obviously an empowered, embodied grown up at this point, but like it's funny sometimes. We're like,
Empowered, grown up.
grown up. It's true. But how is that? I guess I'm curious on that because the other piece with metal energy is that sense of innate rightness and that sense of innate regalness and that sense of I know, and just curious about sort of that journey with that, some of those bumps, and if you have anything to offer anyone who might be listening in who's like, yes, like I struggle with like other people's definitions of these things for me, or other people asking me to and so I think this is what it is too, people misinterpreting your big picture vision for not being present or not being focused or not being driven or not being appreciative, right? It seems like it gets really messy in other people's minds.
Yeah, it definitely gets messy. And I think that the complication about thinking really big is that people often view that you're not living in the moment, even though I am always in the moment. Like I live very moment to moment. I'm just also like tying those moments together to turn into. Oh no, it stopped.
It
The
stopped.
Facebook Live stopped. Yes. Well, we're still recording, so um, I'll start the broadcast again. I won't share it everywhere because everybody
Okay.
can just come back. Share on your own timeline, share on my page. So, I think like the lack of presence is really hard. That's a hard thing when I am trying to talk to people like about big picture vision. They often think I'm being like unaware that
Mm.
there is. I'm being aware. Sorry, that was the go live. I'll just give it a second since it's going live. Yeah, there it goes. So I think that like ultimately the lack of the feeling of lack of presence, even though I am present, and I think people view it as I'm not present in my own life, which I think can come across really. It doesn't come across the way that you necessarily want it to come across, right? Like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
people see that and think that you're kind of like flighty
Mm-hmm.
rather
Yeah.
than. So I think that that's kind of like the tender part is that people view that often view that metal energy big picture as flighty, even though it's totally not. It's
Yeah.
like the exact opposite of that. It's viewing the path as a path, not as a I'm only here now. It's like I'm living in duality of being here now and going what's next.
Yeah. And being able to really connect those dots in a very like clear bridge way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and I loved what you said about like that misinterpretation, because I think that's the thing that holds us back from owning these pieces, because it's like, I mean, especially with our family and our nearest and dearest, it's like we want them to understand us and see us. And sometimes when we get that feedback, it's like, oh, am I not being present? Like, am I being ungrateful? Like, it makes us start to second guess ourselves. And I have to say, that's a very earthy way to think about things because, Earth's big superpower and lesson is confidence, right? Like, the more an Earth frequency owns their confidence, the more unstoppable they are in the world. And there's a lot that gets in their way. But I think it's that misinterpretation of our gifts that can make them so tender and then can make us want to sort of stop sharing them with specific audiences and then ultimately no audiences because we just sort of like narrow it down.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I think that's a common thread that I see working with clients in other methodologies. I obviously don't work with frequency, but
Yeah.
directly, but indirectly, I frequently am. I am working like with the true how we present
Mm-hmm.
and how our outer world, and then we're shut down for that. I think a lot of times people are being coached in. They're like the goal is to really coach them back into their truest expression rather than to coach them out of like coach them into new patterns. It's really coaching them into a truest expression and being that like authentic self because we've been kind of beaten out of it because it is so much bigger. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And everyone's different. I mean, I have to say, for me, one of the reasons why I love using frequency and discovering it was so helpful in my own life was it helped give me really clear vocabulary to be like, oh, we're really different. Like, we see the world very differently, we work very differently. And that's helpful for me when it comes to accepting feedback, to be like,
Yes.
cool, this is totally how you are. Like, that makes tons of sense. Good for you. I am not like that. That does not work for me. And so it actually gave me the freedom and the space and the vocabulary to understand, to own my own stuff in a much bigger way and to stop being so spun out or tenderized, by those feedbacks, because it was really helpful to be like, oh no, that's you. Okay, got it. This is me. And I'm feeling like ever more connected to myself. And I'm just going to keep doing what I'm going to do. I think that's a really
Totally.
big, I mean, and for me, I mean, I feel like it's that heart, that owning it piece, whatever it is where that magic really happens. When you're not looking without outside yourself, when you're not sort of questioning everything you're doing, like that's where that sense, that like power cell of like battery, what am I saying, trying to say, like infinite battery loop is created when you're really owning your own personal expression, wherever professionally or personally, because that is like no one can take that from you, and you're finally like back to where it's always been there. I mean, every time, and I'm sure this shows up in your work too, every time I do this work with my clients, they're not like, oh my god, this is new. They're like, oh, thank god I'm not crazy. Oh, I can let go of all of these things, like, oh, I can stop trying to be everything to everyone and just be me, and have a tremendous amount of depth and trust in that, instead of feeling like they're pulled in a million directions. It's powerful.
Yes. Yes. For sure.
Yeah. Do we have any
Awesome.
questions? I can't see anything. I'm just over here chit-chatting with you. But if we have any questions.
Doesn't look like any questions. I don't know if we lost a bunch of people when the live cut off, sadly. So we might just have to wait for questions on the recording, since we have the recording too. So,
excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm happy to answer
Awesome.
questions. So if anyone is not live with us right now, but is watching the recording, tag me in one of the Practical Magic groups. Like, I'm happy to dive into this a little bit more. And are we allowed to talk about the event now, about some stuff that's coming up on the horizon?
Yeah. So those of you who are watching and who want to be in person with Ellen and I, and also want to have a mini frequency reading done for you.
Yes.
I mean, you can also find her on our website, but you'll also get one for attending my event that she mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast. It's called Practical Magic Live. You can visit here, MakennaJohnston.com/Practical Magic Live. And the early bird price goes away in a week, goes away at midnight on the 14th. So if you want to come, now is the time. And one of the great speakers that will be there is Miss Ellen Ercollini right here.
Oh my god, earthquake in California. That was just my hand. It wasn't an earthquake. That was just my hand. It just looks like an earthquake.
That was pretty scary for a moment.
That's how excited I am. Yay! We'll be in Texas together.
Yay! Yes, we will be in San Antonio together. And you'll get a mini frequency reading, and she'll be here to talk about how to utilize frequency and how to leverage it. So we would love to see you there. And that again is MakennaJohnston.com/Practical Magic Live.
Yes. Yeah, I'm really excited about that. I've been game planning. I'm already planning on taking a day afterwards just to like be in San Antonio, because it's a place that I've never visited before and want to soak up. But also, like, it's been so fun connecting with the other participants who are going to be there. And I have to tell you guys, like, the early bird registration stuff that Makenna has set up is amazing. Like, if I weren't speaking, I would be going and I would be booking that early bird ticket. Like, you get so much value. Like, it's phenomenal. And to circle back to her frequency, for those of you paying attention, Metals, hostess with the mostest, like, put together incredible events, like it's very sensory. It's going to be like, and I'm not like, I don't have any more information than anyone watching in terms of what it's going to be on the inside. But I know with Makenna's metal energy, it's going to be amazing and very like finer things, and the I's dotted and the T's crossed, and just really like a beautiful experience that's very supportive from start to finish, because that's who she is. And anytime a metal person does any sort of event, you know that they've already thought it through from start to finish before they even announced that it was an idea of theirs. So this is going to be, I'm just so excited to get to be there in person with all of you, because I know it's going to be an extraordinary, well thought out, transformative event. And it's already been so fun to be part of the community. I can't wait to be there live.
Yay! Thank you so much for this, Ellen.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
Well, I'm going to stop the Facebook Live.
Excellent. Bye, everybody. Tag me with questions. I'm happy to keep talking.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Are we done with live? Okay, now I'm gonna.
There we go. Oh, and I should stop the recording too.